What made growing up in the 1970s so special? Childhood in the 1970s was a truly free time. No helicopter parents, no pre-planned playdates, just you and adventures that lasted until the streetlights came on. It was the sound of a record player, the smell of purple Ditto paper, the feeling of your feet burning on vinyl car seats. Games didn't need batteries. TVs only had a few channels. The phone was stuck to the wall, and every street corner or small patch of woods became a mysterious land. Let's go back to the 70s, where childhood truly was a wonderful journey. Unlimited freedom and unmatched self-reliance. Think about it. Today, children are strapped into booster seats until they're 10 and forced to wear helmets even before they can ride a tricycle steadily. But what about many previous generations? It's safe to say they were a little less concerned about safety. From the moment we could crawl, we were free to climb all over the car seats, finding a comfortable spot wherever we wanted. Cars weren't just a means of transport. They were a miniature world full of mysteries to explore. Instead of video screens or iPads, we entertained ourselves by playing with old radio knobs, winding car windows up and down, or exploring the ashtrays in the car. And perhaps a memorable lesson many children learned was that a cigarette lighter could still be very hot, even when it was no longer glowing red. Station wagons, with their rear cargo areas, became our mobile playrooms, a playground on wheels. We were even allowed to stick our heads out the back window, make faces at the car behind us, and inhale lead fumes drifting back from the exhaust. Or we would lie stretched out in the back, watching telephone wires fly across the blue sky. It was the perfect spot for a nap on long, sunny, and breezy trips. This freedom instilled in us a free spirit, an ability to adapt, and a belief that the outside world was an endless playground waiting for us to discover. Diverse and creative wheeled toys. Childhood back then was so much fun because it was filled with wheeled toys, symbols of imagination and speed. Every trip to Kmart wasn't just a shopping trip. It was a sacred pilgrimage to hunt for small treasures, precious Matchbox or Hot Wheels cars. We would bring them home and turn the slick kitchen floor into a Formula One racetrack, or assemble loops and ramps on bright orange racetracks. The squeal of small wheels on plastic, the gentle clang as they collided, all created a symphony of childhood. We also had the Fisher-Price garage with its fun-rattling hand-crank elevator and a loud bell that rang when cars arrived, or the multi-level Hot Wheels service center where tiny cars were serviced and prepared for new races. Then, there were the SSP racers, a masterpiece of simple yet captivating engineering. You'd start them by pulling a plastic string, making the metal flywheel inside spin as fast as possible, creating a powerful whirring sound before the car shot off like the wind. This mechanism was similar to smash-up derby cars, where crashes were welcomed with cheers. We also had intricate electric train sets with winding tracks, and slot car tracks where we controlled tiny electric cars racing in grooves. Sturdy metal Tonka trucks were indispensable companions in the sandbox, where we built giant construction sites. Then came speed burners, penny racers, and even the girl's Barbie had her own Corvette, RV, and dune buggy, making doll adventures more vivid than ever. The ultimate symbols, bicycles and big wheels. However, even better than toy cars were the vehicles you could drive yourself. Thanks to our favorite idol, Evel Knievel, our life plan was quite simple and ambitious. First, get a bike. A Schwinn Stingray was top priority. In particular, the deluxe crate model with front and rear suspension, disc brakes, and a 5-speed shifter on the crossbar was every kid's ultimate dream. Second, we had to learn to ride a bike without training wheels, an important ritual to prove maturity and independence. And third, the biggest goal was to become a neighborhood hero by jumping our bikes over a record number of trash cans, or even over other kids, or a large stack of burning cardboard boxes. Besides bicycles, the world of pedal toys also included the crazy car, with hand-controlled wheels, allowing us to perform unexpected and dramatic spins, or the green machine, with a special steering lever that created impressive spins, turning every corner into a spectacular show. We also had pedal tractors, small pedal cars, and especially homemade go-karts. These go-karts were pieced together from scrap wood and old lawnmower wheels, providing a sense of speed and the satisfaction of creating your own mode of transportation. For many 70s kids, the first experience of true self-propelled freedom came from the bright yellow big wheel Mark X. Our big wheel was pedal-powered, fueled by boundless imagination. Thanks to all the police shows we watched on TV, our imaginations had countless scenarios to work with. We would transform into police officers chasing criminals, speed racers, or world-saving heroes on our big wheel. The big wheel was like a gateway to great adventures, where all limits were broken by the power of imagination. The mysterious woods and self-built forts. As many families moved out of big cities and into new suburban areas sprouting up far outside urban centers, many of us found ourselves living in neighborhoods right on the edge of large, undeveloped plots of land. Eventually, all these spaces would be turned into new residential areas or future roads. But until that happened, we, the children, collectively called these areas the woods. Depending on where you lived, your woods might contain old train tracks, abandoned quarries, or even long deserted houses. Some of these areas had been untouched for decades, so you never knew what you might discover there. You could be in the woods, hunting for turtles and tadpoles in ponds, and suddenly come across old tires, vintage washing machines, old car parts, and sometimes even old cars. Of course, thanks to new houses being built everywhere, there was always a ready supply of scrap wood that we salvaged to build secret shelters and tree houses deep in the woods. Over time, these small huts would become hiding places for small treasures. Mismatched beer cans, nearly empty cigarette packs, and many old tattered issues of a famous magazine published by the late Hugh Hefner. What's amazing is that parents didn't seem to worry much about what we did there, or even ask much about where we had gone. As long as we were home before dark, everything was fine. This trust and freedom fostered in us an adventurous spirit, a problem-solving ability, and a deep respect for the natural world around us. The impromptu woods became a school without a curriculum, a limitless laboratory, where we learned life's most important lessons. Do you remember the first time you discovered your own woods? What are your most memorable memories of those free adventures? Share below. The neighborhood, everyone's common playground. Your first friendships all started with other kids in the neighborhood. Even if they weren't the friends we hung out with at school, neighborhood friends were always just a doorbell ring away. This proximity created a special bond, an intimacy that didn't require appointments or elaborate planning. That availability was all that mattered when you wanted to organize a dramatic street hockey game, where hockey sticks were made from tree branches and goals were 2 stones, or a fun backyard baseball game with powerful hits and spectacular catches. No need for phone calls or texts. Just seeing a moving truck arrive in the neighborhood, you and your friends would immediately go straight over, ring the doorbell, and ask if there were any kids who wanted to play. It was an unspoken ritual, an invitation to join the neighborhood's child community. Neighborhoods in the 70s were much friendlier and more open. As a kid in the neighborhood, you were pretty much welcome to run around everywhere, from one yard to another, from one sidewalk to another, as long as you didn't cause any trouble. Adults in the neighborhood usually knew all the kids by sight, and they would naturally keep an eye on us. This created a sense of safety and belonging, a larger community where everyone was part of a big family. The neighborhood wasn't just houses, it was a network of relationships, memories, and endless adventures where every day could be a new story. Emphasis on personal responsibility. Unlike today's trend of overprotecting children, 70s kids were raised in an environment where personal responsibility was emphasized and an indispensable part of life. If you got hurt doing something stupid on someone else's property, for example, climbing a tree and falling, or running and tripping in a neighbor's backyard, your parents would never think of suing the property owner. Instead, their reaction was much simpler and more practical. They would simply bandage your wound carefully, whether it was a small scratch or a large gash, and then tell you to be more careful next time. There were no overly harsh scoldings, no blaming others, just a direct lesson about consequences and self-accountability. This lesson shaped a generation of self-reliant individuals who understood that their every action could lead to certain results, and they had to bear responsibility for those results. Having to face the consequences of our choices helped us develop risk assessment skills, learn to protect ourselves, and mature quickly. We learned that the world isn't always absolutely safe, and being careful ourselves is more important than any external protective measures. This spirit created a strong, resilient generation with a deep sense of their role in society, who weren't afraid to face challenges and were confident in their own abilities. It was an invaluable life lesson, conveyed not through words, but through actual experiences. Memorable block parties. In the days before social media made people more isolated, the 70s were a time when people seemed to get along better and truly knew many of their neighbors. Relationships between families didn't stop at casual greetings, but developed into a strong community spirit where people cared for and supported each other. One of the best examples of this spirit was block parties, a memorable tradition rarely seen today. These parties weren't elaborately organized events, but rather spontaneous, cozy gatherings. Families along the street would pull picnic tables into the middle of the road, set up folding chairs, light up glowing charcoal grills, and bring out large coolers full of drinks. The street, typically for vehicles, suddenly transformed into a common space for everyone. It was a lively scene where laughter, delicious food smells, and music blended together. While adults gathered, drank beer, chatted, and socialized, sharing daily stories, children fully took advantage of this unique opportunity. We would freely ride bikes, big wheels, or roller skate in the safely blocked-off street. The wide road suddenly became our private playground, with no cars, no traffic worries. These were moments of community bonding rarely seen today, where the boundaries between families seemed to disappear, and everyone created beautiful memories together, etched into every child's mind. Block parties weren't just a party, they were a festival of kinship, connection, and a true community spirit. The power of unlimited creativity and imagination. Childhood in the 70s was an era where pure creativity was celebrated and thrived. In a world not yet saturated by technology, toys like Lego didn't need complicated instruction manuals. We only needed our imagination to turn simple plastic bricks into anything we could think of, from majestic castles, spacecraft, to futuristic cities. This freedom encouraged us to think independently and develop problem-solving skills through experimentation and exploration. Instead of relying on technology for entertainment, we created our own fun from the simplest things, items adults might consider mundane. A typical example was the buttons in cars. We could spend hours twisting, pressing, and experimenting with all sorts of sounds, creating stories and games from those simple actions. Our imagination was nourished by what we observed in daily life. For instance, the police shows we watched on TV provided countless scenarios for our big wheel games. We didn't just watch, we reenacted. We became characters in those stories and turned neighborhood streets into action scenes. Self-built forts in the woods, constructed from discarded materials from construction sites, were also a strong testament to our ability to turn discarded items into magical adventure spaces. Every piece of wood, every board could become part of a castle wall, a suspension bridge, or a secret door. The power of unlimited creativity and imagination helped us turn ordinary things into extraordinary ones, creating memorable memories and valuable life skills that no textbook could teach. The legendary soundtrack of a free generation. If words often couldn't express feelings completely, then 70s music perfectly filled that void. Music wasn't just melodies. It was the voice of a generation, the heartbeat of an era. It brought comfort, joy, and a deep sense of connection among people. As one song said, "All people need is a way to make them smile. It isn't hard at all." Music was a powerful medium to convey messages, to make people feel better about themselves and the world around them. Melodies like "Listen to the Music" by the Doobie Brothers, or countless other songs with positive lyrics and catchy tunes, became symbols of a generation's spirit of freedom, joy, and connection. We grew up with music playing from old radios, from record players in living rooms, or from cassette tapes in our parents' cars. Music permeated every corner of life, from vibrant block parties, long car trips, to afternoons playing in the park. Music was an indispensable part of shaping the 70s childhood experience. It was the soundtrack to adventures, budding friendships, and moments of self-discovery. Every song was a story, an emotion, a memory. Music taught a whole generation how to feel, how to express themselves, and how to connect with the world around them most authentically. Only 3 TV channels and landline phones. Imagine a normal evening in the 70s. Instead of everyone having their own device, their own world, the whole family would gather around a single screen. There were only 3 TV channels to choose from, and that was all we had. No YouTube replay options, no endless streaming services. If you missed a favorite show, you'd have to wait for the next rerun, or hear about it from friends the next day. This created a shared family event, a moment where everyone shared laughter, suspense, or small debates about characters in shows. And phones? We didn't have convenient smartphones fitting neatly in our pockets, connecting us to the world with a single touch. Instead, there were heavy wall-mounted phones with old rotary dials. To call a friend, you had to go through an emotional process. It was the feeling of suspense as you dialed each number on the rotary dial, waiting for the familiar beep, and praying it wasn't your friend's older sister picking up, who might grill you about everything or simply say your friend wasn't home. Toys that didn't need charging. Can you imagine a world where toys didn't need to be plugged in to charge? That was a vivid reality in our 70s childhood. While children today grow up with shimmering screens and worries about low batteries, our toy world was completely different. We didn't have complex electronic toys or devices requiring continuous power, only toys that operated by the power of imagination and boundless creativity. Think about Matchbox or Hot Wheels cars. They only needed a flat surface to race at breakneck speed, or dolls that didn't need any electronic parts to come alive in our stories. Lego bricks didn't need batteries to build majestic castles or spaceships. Heavy metal Tonka trucks rolled on the sandbox without a drop of electricity. Kids didn't have to worry about finding an outlet or waiting hours for batteries to charge before they could continue playing. This meant our fun was uninterrupted. We could play from early morning until late at night, unconstrained by any technological limits. The simplicity of non-battery toys encouraged us to interact more with our surroundings, using our thinking and creative abilities to invent new games. Oh, what a good time we had without advanced technology. Polaroid cameras. Do you remember the magical feeling of watching a Polaroid photo slowly develop? It was an unforgettable experience, a moment of wonder and surprise. In today's world, with digital cameras and smartphones taking hundreds of photos every minute, the concept of a photo needing time to appear seems alien. But in the 70s, Polaroid cameras were truly special. When a photo had just been taken, everyone would crowd around, holding their breath in anticipation. Our eyes were glued to the white photo, slowly watching images and colors appear, little by little. It was a moment full of tension, excitement, mixed with a little worry about whether you had captured the moment or if someone had blinked. Each photo was unique, unable to be edited or deleted immediately. It required precision, patience, and a bit of luck. The instant satisfaction of seeing the final image clearly emerge was truly unique, something hard to find today. It was a physical keepsake, a tangible piece of memory instantly available. Polaroid cameras turned every photo moment into a special event, a small performance of science and art, and those photos became cherished treasures, vividly recalling past moments. Rotary phones. Before instant messaging or convenient video calls to chat with friends, we had two main options in the 70s. One was to walk to their house, knock on the door, and hope they were home and willing to come out and play. The other was to bravely face the rotary phone, a symbol of patience and suspense. The rotary phone wasn't just a device. It was a small psychological test every time you wanted to make a call. The feeling of anxiety as you dialed each number on the rotary dial was unforgettable. You had to insert your finger into the number hole, firmly rotate clockwise until your finger touched the metal stopper, then release and listen to the click of the dial, returning to its original position. You repeated this for each number. If you dialed a wrong number, you had to hang up and start over. There was no undo button or stored contacts. And then, the scariest thing was hoping your friend's older sister wouldn't pick up. We often felt like we were walking a tightrope when making calls, because an adult picking up, especially an older sister, could mean the call would be monitored, or worse, rejected for any reason. It was a unique experience, challenging but also full of memories. The rotary phone taught us patience, focus, and a bit of social communication skills in having to overcome the adult gatekeepers. Pen pals. And pen pals, they were like prehistoric direct messages, DMs. In a world without internet or email, having a pen pal from another city or even another country was something truly magical and exciting. Each letter was a small treasure, a piece from a distant world, sent through the post office. The waiting time for a letter to arrive could be several weeks, even months, depending on the geographical distance. But its value was incomparable. The feeling of eagerly waiting for the mailman every day, hoping to see an envelope with your friend's unfamiliar handwriting. Then the burst of joy upon opening the envelope, carefully unfolding pages containing stories, thoughts, and scribbled drawings from a friend you had never met. It was a deep and genuine form of connection, where we had to pour all our thoughts and feelings into every word. No emojis or GIFs. It was all in the story you told, in how you expressed emotions through words. Pen pals broadened our worldview, showing us different cultures, different lives, and diverse thoughts. This was also part of the connection we don't see much today. A memory of how we built relationships in a simpler, but no less rich, world.
Do you remember having a pen pal? Share with us how you felt receiving a letter.
Silly Putty. Silly Putty, my favorite toy. This orange-pink modeling compound wasn't just a blob of rubber. It was a gateway to endless creativity and mischievous pranks. We loved stretching newspaper headlines from the Sunday comics until Dick Tracy's face looked like it stepped out of a funhouse mirror. The feeling of holding a brand new, soft lump of silly putty, then pressing it firmly onto the newspaper, then slowly pulling it off, and watching the printed image hilariously distort. It was a simple joy that no high-tech toy could compare to. The newspaper ink never completely came off our hands, leaving grayish-black smudges on our fingers. But that was also part of the charm. It was like a badge of honor, a sign that you had just spent an afternoon full of creativity and mischief. Silly Putty could also be stretched into amazingly thin strands, rolled into a bouncy ball, or even molded into a soft blob to sculpt all sorts of shapes. The characteristic scent of Silly Putty, combined with the smell of old newspaper, created a multi-sensory experience that still lingers in memory. It taught kids that fun could come from the simplest things, from transforming everyday materials into unique toys. Filmstrip overhead projector days at school. Nothing compares to the smell of freshly printed Ditto paper in the first class. It was one of the most distinctive scents of 70s school, a sweet and captivating chemical smell we could never forget. Ms. Harrison, our teacher, would hand out those papers, still warm from the printer, and the whole class would perform an unspoken ritual. We would hold the purple-inked paper up to our noses and take a deep breath. That sweet chemical smell was better than any marker or glue we weren't allowed to sniff at home. By the end of the day, our hands would be covered in purple ink, an unmistakable sign of a day of learning. It was like a secret club badge, proof of what we had learned and experienced. Additionally, film strip sessions were an important part of learning. The whole class would sit in the dark, watching images slowly appear on the screen, accompanied by a small beep each time the teacher changed slides. Or the overhead projectors, where teachers wrote directly onto transparent film, and their writing appeared clearly on the board. These teaching methods may seem outdated compared to modern technology, but they offered a special interaction and focus. We weren't distracted by individual screens. Everyone focused on a single point, learning and exploring together. These scents, sounds, and images created vivid school memories, not just of knowledge, but also of the atmosphere of a bygone era. Lite-Brite Toy. My Lite-Brite was like a personal constellation maker. This toy was a light board with hundreds of small holes for us to insert colorful plastic pegs. I often waited until it was completely dark when night enveloped the room, then plugged in the Lite-Brite. Immediately, my pegboard masterpieces came alive with magical light. From twinkling spacecraft seemingly flying in space to vibrant, colorful flowers, each creation looked like it was made from captured starlight. The feeling of creating a shimmering image from tiny pegs was truly satisfying. The brilliant colors contrasted with the surrounding darkness, creating a mesmerizing visual effect. The real challenge wasn't creativity, but finding all those tiny pegs when they spilled out of the box. They would scatter across the floor like colorful glitter, waiting for unlucky bare feet on midnight snack runs. Stepping on one of those tiny pegs could make you scream in agonizing pain. But even so, it was worth every cry of pain. Lite-Brite wasn't just a toy. It was a tool for us to express creativity, explore the world of light and color, and create our own unique works of art. It was a shimmering memory of 70s childhood. Rock'em Sock'em Robots. Rock'em Sock'em Robots reigned on our coffee table all summer long in 1976. It wasn't just a game, it was a supreme competition, a no-holds-barred battle between the red robot and the blue robot. The sweet, characteristic plastic smell when you first opened the box, a scent unmistakable from anything else, signaled hours of entertainment to come. The satisfying chunk-chunk sound of the controls as you pressed them, directing the two robot boxers to throw punches, and then the glorious crack when you landed the perfect uppercut, making your opponent's head pop up. That was the ultimate moment of victory, an unparalleled feeling of triumph. My brother Tommy and I had epic tournaments, not just simple matches, but major events. We often became our own sports commentators, with dramatic cheers and in-depth analyses of each punch. And after every victory, a proud victory dance was a must, expressing the winner's joy and satisfaction. Rock'em Sock'em Robots taught us about competition, perseverance, and the joy of winning. It was also a great way to unwind and have fun after stressful school hours. This toy not only brought joy, it also created memorable memories of brotherhood, dramatic matches, and unforgettable moments of victory. 20 things we miss the most about the 1970s. Perhaps we, the children of the 1970s, sometimes make our grandchildren doze off with stories about how wonderful the old days were. But what truly made our youth so special? That decade wasn't just unique, it was truly glorious, in a way no other decade can boast. Today, let's take an emotional journey back to that era, to discover the 20 things we miss most about the 70s. Physical play. Do you still remember those spontaneous calls ringing out from outside your window? Want to come out and play? That wasn't just a regular question. It was an invitation to a world of freedom, unbound, where the real adventure began the moment you stepped out the door. We didn't have electronic screens, no internet or mobile devices to keep us indoors. Instead, the whole world was our playground, from lush green parks, empty streets, to glittering riverbanks. Every street corner, every bush could become the setting for a new game. It could be as simple as kicking an old can into a lawless soccer match, or gathering under a big tree to chat about complex playground politics. Who gets to play first? Who's the captain? Who's out? Or classic mischief like knocking on someone's door and running away together, our laughter ringing through the neighborhood. All those activities truly required physical effort. That feeling of absolute freedom, not worrying about anything but the present joy, is truly hard to find these days. We rode bikes with friends, feeling the cool breeze glide through our hair, oblivious to time, until the streetlights came on, signaling it was reluctantly time to go home. Without helicopter parents, hovering and monitoring every step, we were allowed to grow up a bit wilder, to discover our own limits, resolve conflicts, and learn to survive in a big world without constant adult intervention. Scratches on our knees, bumps on our foreheads weren't signs of danger, but badges of honor, proof of a childhood full of memories, boundless energy, and infinite innocence. The quiet and less connection. In the 70s, life moved at a much slower and calmer pace compared to the rush of the modern world. Imagine a world without constant notifications from mobile phones, without endless news feeds on social media, without the pressure to be always online. The absence of connected devices created an astonishingly quiet space, allowing us to truly be present in every moment. If there was an embarrassing moment, a funny joke, or any event, it would only exist in your memory and those who were there. No photos or videos were recorded and shared forever on the internet. This created a special value for personal memories, turning them into precious gems belonging only to you. Today's society is too noisy, too much information, too many distractions that make it difficult for us to find peace of mind. In the 70s, quietness wasn't an absence, but the presence of a space to think, to listen to ourselves, and to truly connect with those around us by talking directly, looking into each other's eyes. The innocence of that era was also linked to a lack of information about the complexities of the outside world. We weren't flooded with negative news or global issues, which helped us maintain a pure spirit with less anxiety. While sometimes the lack of connection could be inconvenient, it fostered deeper, more lasting relationships with friends and neighbors. You had to actively seek out, talk, or write letters, creating more meaningful interactions. It was an era where true connection came from the heart, not from a Wi-Fi signal. Music magazines. Before the era of the internet and online entertainment news, the world of music lovers in the 70s revolved around newsstands filled with music magazines. The bottom shelf of newsstands, where the light seemed a bit dimmer, always drew our attention. There, you could find a wide array of magazines that not only provided information, but also endless inspiration, with pin-up photos of 70s pop stars, the idols we admired and wanted to know everything about. What was even more special was that these magazines often came with the lyrics of unforgettable songs, helping us not only listen, but also understand more deeply the messages artists wanted to convey. For more serious readers, those who wanted to delve deeper into the history and development of music, there were valuable publications like The Story of Pop. This was a series of expensive but extremely worthwhile collectibles, meticulously and thoroughly documenting the evolution of popular music, from its earliest roots in the 1950s to the present. Once you bought the first issue of a series like The Story of Pop, you'd feel an intense desire to own all subsequent issues to complete your collection. Each issue wasn't just a simple publication, it was a doorway to the world of music, of bands, of cultural movements. That's how we connected with our idols, learned about music history, and shared our passion with friends. These magazines didn't just provide information, they also fostered a culture of reading, research, and discovery. Turning each page, admiring each photo, and reading every line was a unique, captivating experience, creating deep memories of a time when music information wasn't as easily accessible as it is today, making each copy incredibly valuable and cherished. According to you, what from the 70s cannot be replaced in our modern world today? Gritty, realistic, and gloomy films. The 70s produced a unique cinematic style, a distinct quality that we rarely see in films before and after this period. Gritty, realistic, and gloomy films. Unlike the usual polished or perfect look, actors in these films looked very natural, sometimes disheveled, with minimal makeup, bringing an astonishing authenticity. Film settings often looked makeshift, somewhat rustic, and frequently used natural light, giving the impression that real life was unfolding right before your eyes. These films carried a heavy and authentic atmosphere, gloomy even when trying to elicit laughter, making viewers feel honest, sometimes uncomfortable, but also intriguing. There were many reasons for this cinematic style. Cultural influences from the Vietnam War, urban decay, and disillusionment with American society created a generally bleak backdrop, reflected on screen. Simultaneously, major film studios faced bankruptcy risks, forcing them to take chances and grant more creative control to young directors. This led to the birth of edgier, more realistic films with smaller budgets. The collapse of the Hollywood Production Code, Hays Code, was also a significant factor, allowing more violent and mature themes to be included in films without strict censorship as before. Additionally, changes in acting with method acting, Stanislavski method, contributed to this naturalness and authenticity. Typical examples include The French Connection, The Friends of Eddie Coyle, Serpico, Mean Streets, Dog Day Afternoon, Rocky, The Deer Hunter, The Warriors. Notably, criminals in films were no longer idealized but depicted rawly. They were dirty, cruel, ugly, and often lived in dismal apartments. These films weren't just entertainment, they were a true reflection of a volatile period in history, providing a vivid and unforgettable feeling. Vibrant and free fashion. The 70s was a fashion revolution, an era of unprecedented vibrancy, freedom, and diversity. Think of bright orange flare pants, oversized butterfly collars, stylish striped tank tops, or 4-inch platform shoes that significantly cheated your height. And of course, long, flowing, shoulder-length hair was a symbol of freedom and rebellion. This decade didn't just offer one dominant style, but also saw the revival of 50s fashion, the explosion of punk with its torn and edgy outfits, the emergence of skinheads with their strong style, and the peak of dazzling disco fashion, ready for non-stop party nights. A major trend, characteristic for both men and women, was ribbed, tight-fitting tops and flare pants. These tops subtly hugged the body's curves without being ostentatious, perfectly paired with flare pants to create an elegant yet very personal look. This was also the decade when women began to be more widely accepted wearing wide-leg trousers, marking an important step in the women's liberation movement. Suede was also an unmistakable feature of the 70s, used in dresses, coats, skirts, in warm, earthy tones like dusty pink, earth brown, or mustard yellow, bringing a classic and luxurious look. Affordable housing. Looking at today's economic and social landscape, no one should say that life for kids today is easier than what we experienced. One of the most distinct and memorable differences about the 70s was that home ownership was still a fairly attainable dream for many. Our parents, at a relatively young age, were able to buy their own homes, a significant life milestone that seems like an extremely huge challenge for the younger generation today. Having a council house, a form of social housing provided by the government, was something many looked forward to and considered a right, a solid stepping stone to stabilize life. It wasn't a stroke of lottery luck as we often see in today's housing market. The dream of a family having their own home, a piece of land to settle down, wasn't a luxury, but a practical and feasible goal for the working and middle classes. Housing stability provided a solid foundation for families, allowing them to focus on raising children, developing themselves, and contributing to the community without being burdened by exorbitant rents or crushing debt. Easy home ownership brought not only material security, but also a sense of belonging, a pride in one's home. It was a symbol of independence and success, a goal many strived for and achieved. Looking back, we can't help but feel nostalgic for an era where the dream of one's own home was so simple and accessible. Telephone boxes. In a world before the era of mobile phones and wireless connections, the public telephone box was an indispensable symbol of daily life in the 70s. Who needed a mobile phone when there was a network of phone boxes scattered on every major street corner? These were important communication strongholds where we could call friends, family, or sweethearts without having to worry about someone eavesdropping from the other end of the landline at home. Sometimes, you had to patiently wait in line for your turn, especially during peak hours. But that was part of the experience, a small wait for precious privacy. Even more interesting was that inside each phone box, there were printed directories, including the personal phone numbers of almost everyone in town. You just had to flip through, find a name, and dial. An astonishingly simple operation compared to storing hundreds of contacts on today's smartphones. It was where we could whisper private conversations, arrange secret dates, or simply call home without parental supervision. It represented an era where technology served people in a simpler way, without intruding on private lives. Though obsolete, the image of the red or green telephone box remains deeply etched in memory, reminding us of a time when staying in touch required a little effort, a little wait, and offered a unique sense of excitement and thrill. Real music and vinyl records. The 70s was a golden age for music, where diverse genres and great artists were born, shaping the identity of an entire generation. It was the birth of glam rock, with its dazzling performance styles and powerful sounds, of supergroups with peak musical talent, of complex and artistic prog rock, of classic disco with irresistible dance rhythms, and we can't forget the explosion of Bowie, punk, along with the Bee Gees' Saturday Night Fever movement, which swept through dance floors and charts. Our music idols weren't just singers, they were larger than life, carrying immense influence on culture and lifestyle. Before digital downloads or even CDs, true music came from a black circular plastic disc with delicate spiral grooves, carefully placed on a turntable and played through a needle or stylus. The entire music experience was a ritual, from choosing the record, carefully placing it on the turntable, until the music filled the room. Weekly sales of 7-inch singles, records containing one song on each side, were the sole measure and determined a song's chart position. The joy of collecting vinyl was a special emotion, far beyond owning a music file. We spent hours poring over every detail on the album cover, from unique graphic designs to tiny printed lyrics, sometimes even hidden photos with deeper meanings. Feeling the texture of the album cover, smelling the paper, touching the vinyl surface. That was a multi-sensory experience. The smell of fresh Ditto copies. Before photocopiers became as common and convenient as they are today, teachers in the 70s often used a special device called a Ditto machine, or spirit duplicator, to make copies. The most unique thing about these printouts wasn't the content or image quality, but an incredibly distinct sensory experience, the characteristic chemical smell of freshly printed papers. These papers often had a slight purple tint due to the ink used, and the strong, sweet, yet slightly sharp smell of alcohol and printing chemicals was strangely magical to children. We often sniffed that smell with delight, even vying for the fresh-off-the-machine papers to enjoy the sensation longer. That smell wasn't just a chemical scent. It was tied to so many memories and emotions about school days. It was the smell of upcoming tests, bringing a bit of excitement and anxiety. It was the smell of new coloring activities, promising hours of creativity and fun. Or simply the smell of a fresh assignment, opening up an interesting learning topic. The smell of Ditto paper is a strange but incredibly memorable sensory memory, something the current generation of students will never get to experience. It represents the simplicity of educational technology at the time, when everything wasn't overly complex or automated. That smell became an inseparable part of childhood, a unique scent memory that, whenever recalled, brings back images of the classroom, chalkboards, and innocent school days. Pubs and licensing hours. In the 70s, pubs were the center of social life in many communities, and they were far more plentiful than the number of bars or pubs today. You could easily go on a pub crawl without worrying about transportation, as they were everywhere. Although average wages might have been lower back then compared to now, the cost of a night out at the pub wasn't too expensive, allowing many ordinary people to frequent them for relaxation and socializing. The most distinctive thing about these pubs was their very limited opening hours. Pubs typically closed at 3 p.m. on weekdays and 2 p.m. on Sundays, only reopening at 5:30 p.m. or 7 p.m. on Sundays. These limited opening hours inadvertently fostered a strong sense of community. When the pubs reopened in the evening, all the regulars would flock in at once. This created a lively, bustling atmosphere. People easily met, chatted, and shared stories from their day. There was no lingering at pubs all night long like today. Each pub visit became an anticipated event, an opportunity to truly connect with friends and neighbors. It was where people caught up on local news, discussed everything from sports to politics, in an intimate and cozy space. The summer of 1976. The summer of 1976 wasn't just a regular summer. It went down in history and became the mother of all heat waves, the benchmark for all heat waves to follow. While it might not have been the hottest summer in meteorological history, what made it special was its seemingly endless duration. Sunny day after sunny day, record high temperatures lasting for weeks, turning the surrounding landscape yellow and parched. We enjoyed it to the fullest, not just because of the weather, but also because of the feeling that it was our summer, a unique summer belonging only to our generation. Even though the political and economic context might have been gloomy, with inflation and social instability, it was still a wonderful time to be young, to enjoy life as carefree as possible. We spent endless long days playing outdoors, sunbathing, finding ways to cool off however we could, and creating unforgettable memories with friends and family. The intense heat didn't deter us. On the contrary, it made moments of relaxing in the shade, drinking a cool glass of water, or swimming in a pool even more precious. The memory of the summer of 1976 will live forever in our minds as the park with dangerous playground. If you grew up in the 70s, you'll remember that playgrounds back then were vastly different from the safe, strictly inspected playgrounds children experience today. Modern playgrounds have small plastic slides, soft wood chip surfaces to minimize injuries, and swings equipped with safety harnesses. In contrast, 70s playgrounds were a world of cold steel, heavy chains, and unforgiving concrete. We'll never truly understand the real joy of sliding down a scorching hot metal slide in the summer sun, or falling headfirst from a great height onto hard concrete, then almost immediately bouncing back up with a golf ball-sized bump on our forehead. That was an essential part of growing up, a thrilling rite of passage. Every scar, every bump told a story of daring games, of pushing our own limits. It was where we learned to take risks, to get back up after every fall, and to protect ourselves in an environment with less adult supervision. Swings pushed so high they almost touched the sky, merry-go-rounds spinning at dizzying speeds, or hide-and-seek games in the small woods around the park. All are vivid memories of a childhood full of energy and dramatic challenges. Although seemingly dangerous, it was precisely these playgrounds that helped us develop adaptability, self-confidence, and an adventurous spirit. Qualities that today's generation may have fewer opportunities to cultivate so naturally. Iconic toys and games. The 70s produced a host of iconic toys and games that shaped the childhoods of millions of children and are still remembered today. First up is Atari Pong. Not just a game, but the beginning of a revolution in the video game industry, bringing electronic games into every home and ushering in a new era of entertainment. Then there was the Easy Bake Oven, a toy oven that used a light bulb to bake tiny cakes, bringing joy to aspiring young chefs. Don't forget clackers, two hard acrylic plastic balls on a string, creating a fun clack sound as you swung them together, though sometimes a bit dangerous if not careful. Next was Stretch Armstrong, the muscular rubber man who could stretch many times his original size, providing endless fun for tug-of-war and bending games. Big Wheels, oversized tricycles with a low-to-the-ground design, providing the sensation of high-speed racing right on the sidewalk, a dream for every child. Rock'em Sock'em Robots, a pair of boxing robots in a small ring, challenging players' reaction speed and accuracy to knock out their opponent. Finally, Lite-Brite, a light-up board that allowed you to create colorful images by plugging small plastic pegs into backlit holes. What 70s toy or TV show brings back the most memories for you? Share in the comments. Learning via Schoolhouse Rock and the Electric Company. For kids growing up in the 70s, learning wasn't confined to textbooks and traditional classrooms. It was also creatively delivered through educational television shows. Two of the most prominent names were definitely Schoolhouse Rock and the Electric Company. Schoolhouse Rock became a phenomenon, using engaging songs and animation to teach kids basic knowledge of grammar, math, and civics. Who could forget catchy tunes like Conjunction Junction, What's Your Function? Or I'm Just a Bill? Lessons were cleverly embedded into fun songs, making learning easier and more enjoyable than ever, sticking in our minds for years. The Electric Company, another educational program for slightly older children, was no less special. This show combined songs, humorous skits, and featured a talented cast, including a young Morgan Freeman, making learning to read and grammar incredibly fun and accessible. Short skits, original hip-hop segments, and witty animations transformed learning complex concepts into a game. These programs not only imparted knowledge, but also fostered a love for learning, sparked curiosity, and helped us explore the world around us in a colorful way. Stylish and unique cars. While we might remember 70s cars for their minor breakdowns or sometimes unstable performance, one thing is undeniable. Aesthetically, cars of this decade were truly works of art. Each model had its own beauty, a unique and instantly recognizable personality, vastly different from the uniform design of modern cars today. You could easily distinguish a Cortina from a Capri or a Volkswagen Beetle from any other model. Late 60s and early 70s, muscle cars were the epitome of charm, with many different shapes and colors, possessing powerful, growling V8 engines. They weren't just a means of transport, but also a symbol of rebellion, of the spirit of freedom, and the desire for speed. We remember the power of the Chevrolet Corvette C3, the elegance of the Maserati Bora, the boldness of the Alfa Romeo Montreal, the sporty style of the Datsun 240Z, or the uniqueness of the Jensen Interceptor. All names that have become legends. Sitting behind the wheel of a 70s muscle car, feeling the roar of the engine, the friction of tires on the road, was an exhilarating and freeing experience. We didn't just drive cars. We lived with them, feeling every vibration of the engine, every curve of the body. These cars were part of personal identity, reflecting the owner's style and spirit. They were sculptures of metal and plastic, carrying their own story, their own soul, far different from mass-produced modern cars that sometimes lack uniqueness and emotion. Basic U.S. holidays. In the 70s, the concept of a family holiday could vary greatly, depending on each person's wealth and social status. For many families, a holiday might be a trip by caravan, a compact mobile living unit, or a retreat at simple resorts. For those with more means, it could be a hotel stay. Caravans back then were often very small, without private toilets or laundry facilities, forcing us to use shared public restrooms at the campsite. Weekly showers at the communal facilities weren't just a necessity, but became a highlight, a memorable experience of the holiday week, where people socialized and shared everyday moments. Even hotel holidays, though more luxurious, had their own rules and unique experiences. Hotels often had fixed lunch times, and having a private bathroom in the room was quite a luxury, not standard as it is today. Many rooms only had a wash basin, and shared bathrooms were still a common choice. The feeling when remembering these holidays is one of nostalgia for simplicity, but filled with memorable experiences and family bonding. Despite lacking modern conveniences, these holidays forced us to be more creative, closer to each other, and appreciate the small things. We spent time playing outdoor games, telling stories around bonfires, exploring new lands, and creating unforgettable memories without the need for technology or expensive amenities. Cheap gas. In the early 1970s, one of the most memorable things for many was the relatively low price of gasoline. This contributed significantly to the popularity of large gas-guzzling cars like the muscle cars we just mentioned. You could fill up your tank without worrying too much about the cost, something that seems unimaginable in today's economic climate. Specifically, in 1970, the average price of gas in the U.S. was only about 36 cents a gallon. Although the 1973 oil crisis later pushed prices up a bit due to OPEC's embargo and global political volatility, compared to today's prices, it was still much cheaper and remained affordable for the vast majority of people. Cheap gas enabled a freer lifestyle, encouraging long road trips, spontaneous adventures without being constrained by fuel costs. It was also a crucial factor in the strong development of the automotive industry, with powerful, comfortable car models. Road trips with friends, driving around town just to listen to music and chat, or simply not having to think too much about using the car for daily errands. All were privileges of an era when energy was abundant and affordable. This stands in stark contrast to today's difficult economic reality, where every gas refill is a significant expense, making us cherish those memories of a bygone era when life seemed much lighter. We were younger then. After all that we've mentioned, there's an undeniable truth and the main driver for much of our nostalgia. It's because we were younger then. As broadcaster Henry Kelly genuinely pointed out, much of the longing for the 70s is fueled by a simple desire for lost youth. When we were young, the world seemed bigger, filled with wonder and infinite potential. Every day was an adventure, every moment a new discovery. We had limitless energy, soaring imaginations, and an optimistic outlook on the future. Regardless of any other specific reasons, from great music, unique fashion, free living, or iconic toys, the 70s was a unique and wonderful decade, and we were truly fortunate to have been a part of it. Nostalgia isn't just about what happened, but about who we used to be: innocent children, enthusiastic teenagers, hopeful young adults. Every time we reminisce about the 70s, we don't just remember an era, but also the younger, vibrant version of ourselves. It's a warm feeling, sometimes with a hint of regret, but above all, gratitude for having had unforgettable experiences, memories that shaped who we are today. Among the things we've just mentioned, what do you miss most about your youth, and why? Share your story in the comments. If you enjoyed this trip down memory lane, feeling like you've returned to those carefree days, don't forget to like this video to support us, subscribe to the Who Remember channel to not miss future memory adventures, and don't forget to share this video with friends who also grew up in the 70s, who might find a part of their childhood in these stories. Thank you for watching, listening, and joining us in returning to a golden age of freedom and imagination. See you on the next journey.